And so I decided to do my own research and try and figure out something for my stomach, which I did find. I found a really great herbal remedy that worked well, and it fixed the ulcer that I had in my stomach. And that made me fascinated with natural medicine. That one was a little bit more complex and challenging, but I was able, through lots of trial and error and research, I found a group of herbs that also helped me with that.
Welcome to the Deconstructing Conventional podcast. This interview is brought to you by Healing United, a private membership association committed to helping you reclaim sovereignty over your health, life, and future. You could say our tagline is question everything and rebuild intentionally. In the audio format of the show, there's additional commentary before each episode, and there are also over a dozen audio-only episodes. You can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, including the Healing United PMA app. Look for it in the App Store, and if you want to learn more about the work we do, and especially how we help people heal when the doctors have no answers, visit us online at healingunited.today. Now, on with the show. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. My guest is Dr. Scott A. Johnson. He is a naturopath and an author of 28 books. Well done, Scott. His life drastically changed when he was diagnosed with a chronic illness, which we will talk about in just a second. But after being unsuccessfully treated with Western medicine, Scott completed exhaustive research and discovered potent herbs that benefited his health and kept his health condition in check without drugs. As a result, he is one of the most knowledgeable people in the world about the topic of essential oils. He has since spent thousands of hours studying natural therapies and is dedicated to helping people discover greater wellness naturally. Bravo. As I think you'll hear today, he has a knack for uniting the art of natural healing with some evidence-based science. So, Scott, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
You bet. Thanks for inviting me to be on, Christian.
It's good to have you. Okay, so let's start with what got you into this world of natural health. Tell us about the health challenge you had and how that got you to do the work that you do today.
Yeah, my story's interesting, but I find it closely resembles many other people's journeys into natural medicine, that they had their own health challenges and just wanted a better option than was available to them. And that was the same with me in my early to mid 20s. I was diagnosed with a condition called ankylosing spondylitis. Most people haven't heard of it because it doesn't affect a lot of the adult population. It's estimated to affect roughly less than 1% of the adult population. And what it is a chronic autoinflammatory. So a little bit different than an autoimmune condition, but similar mechanism where the immune system's going awry and attacking its own tissues. It's just the part of the immune system that's gone awry is different with autoinflammatory versus autoimmune. And the most common symptom of this is really a lot of pain, severe pain and stiffness in the back, especially after rest. And so waking up in the morning would be really one of the most challenging times because you've already had a long period of rest. Generally, your back can feel really painful, stiff. The other problem with this condition is it's very progressive. And when I say progressive, I mean that it can affect many different tissues in the body. It can affect your lungs, and it can affect your heart, your eyes, other joints. And it's also one that tends to, if you do a drug route, it'll tend to respond to a drug for a little while, and then all of a sudden that drug doesn't work anymore. And so it starts to kind of override what the drug was doing. When I was diagnosed with that, I was put on your traditional starting or standard medication, which is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. In my case, it was indomethacin. And I was on that, and it seemed like that was reducing the pain and stiffness that I was experiencing. But it wasn't too long after that, just a few months in, that I started to have stomach aches. And I was going, okay,
Yep.
What's going on here? This is probably that dreaded side effect of an NSAID that it's eaten my stomach. And so I called my rheumatologist and I said, hey, I'm starting to have stomach pain. So what do you recommend? Is there a different medication? And he said, oh, no, we don't need to switch your medications. We just need to give you a proton pump inhibitor, and that will stop the acid in your stomach. And then you won't have that stomach ache anymore. And I was like, okay, I didn't know anything better at the time and just trusted this rheumatologist. And so he gave me the prescription. I took the the proton pump inhibitor for only about 2 weeks, and it seemed like it was helping. And then all of a sudden, it stopped working. I started to have even more severe stomach pain to where I would almost double over. And so I was like, okay, this is not working. And so I called him back, and the office was like, oh, well, maybe we can try a different medication. We can give you some Zantac in addition to that, and that will help. And I was like, oh, this doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I don't want to be on drug after drug after drug that are trying to fix the previous drug's problem that it's causing. And so I decided to do my own research and try and figure out something for my stomach, which I did find. I found a really great herbal remedy that worked well, and it fixed the ulcer that I had in my stomach. And that made me fascinated with natural medicine. I thought, well, if I can do something about my stomach, well, can't I do something about the ankylosing spondylitis too?
Right.
Isn't there going to be a solution for that? That one was a little bit more complex and challenging, but I was able to, through lots of trial and error and research, I found a group of herbs that also helped me with that. And I started to see big improvements and started to feel so much better. And I was excited. I thought, man, this rheumatologist is going to love all this stuff that I found because he'll be able to help more of his patients. And so I waited until my next appointment, and I took all of my supplement bottles up in a bag. And I went to the appointment, and I just kind of had that sitting on the side. I let him do all the tests that he does. They test your flexibility, your lung capacity. They obviously do blood draws to look at how there's some inflammatory markers they're looking at, and kidney function and other things. And he did all those tests, and he goes, man, you're doing excellent. In fact, I would say you're above average for somebody who doesn't even have this condition. And so, what do you attribute that to? And I think he was expecting me to say, yeah, the drugs have just been working so well. And I said, well, actually, I stopped taking all the medications that you had prescribed. And I started taking these, and I took out my supplements and was showing him and kind of telling him why I was taking them and what they were doing and what my experience had been. And I could tell that his demeanor changed.
Mhm.
He had a facial expression that I knew something had changed, but he let me finish. And then after I finished talking to him, he stood up and literally pointed into my chest and said, if you won't listen to what I tell you to do and take the medications I tell you to do, then get out of my office and come back when you need me because you will. And then he walked out the door and just left me sitting there. And
Wow.
I was just in shock. And so I thought, I just sat there for a minute going, did that just really happen? What is going on? And so I gathered up all my stuff, and I walked out of the office and found my way back to the reception and where I could leave. And the receptionist says, hey, we need to schedule you for your next appointment. I said, no, I'm not coming back, and just walked out the door. And I have not been back since. And so that gave me a passion for natural medicine to where I started to say, I really want to help other people the same way I've been able to help myself, but it will take some education to do it because I was doing research as a layperson who didn't really know biology, didn't really know the mechanisms, pathways, the targets on cells that I really needed to focus on. I was just trying to do things based on the limited knowledge that I had. And so at the time I was studying business management in college, and that was my goal, is to continue in business management. And I shifted my education to study natural medicine, and then ended up getting a doctorate in naturopathy. And so that's really what drove me to it. Was a condition that I would not wish on anybody, but I consider it a tremendous blessing in my life because it shifted me down a path that is far more rewarding and fulfilling than what I would have been in had I stayed in business management.
Wow. What a story. I mean, it sounds like in some ways it parallels mine. I didn't go the route you did. I went to a chiropractor who turned my understanding of structure and of nutrition and what just kind of taught me how the pharmaceutical world worked. And I just haven't looked back. All these 20 something years later, I'm still in this work. And it's that similar story that your healing kind of becomes your mission. I love how that arresting moment of being poked in the chest saying, it's just, it's haughty. It's hubris. It's just so many things mixed into. Do you think you're God? Do you have like it the spell that some doctors are under to not be able to hear anything outside of what they're trained in? It's almost like an insult that you say, actually, the medicines weren't working, but this did. And to hit such a wall of closed-mindedness is telling. So thank you for telling that story. Anything you want to add to it?
Well, I just say that didn't end there. I have had other physicians who have sent me messages or even wrote reviews on my book saying I'm dangerous. And because I wrote a book about how to use what I've done
Hmm.
to help put my ankylosing spondylitis in remission, because I got asked that all the time. People would find out I have the condition and they'd go, "You're not taking any medications. How did you do that?"
Hmm.
And so it would take a long time to explain because it's not just simply taking the herbs. I made lifestyle adjustments.
Right.
I changed the way I eat. I changed my exercise routine. I added stretching and strengthening and core exercises and so I changed so many things beyond just taking these supplements. And so it would take a long time to explain. So I finally put it in a book where people could just read it and they could figure it out and follow the advice that I have in there. And I get messages from all over the world telling me I've started this and I'm reducing my medication and I'm doing so much better, which is really some of my favorite messages to receive. But then coinciding with that, I frequently also get messages in my inbox from physicians or healthcare professionals or bad reviews on my book saying it's dangerous to not take the medications and you really need to focus on the medications. And just last week, I had somebody who was in on my social media talking about I was a snake oil salesman and just trying to sell a cure and benefiting on people's pain. And I just think that these individuals don't know me at all if they think that's what it is, because it's purely to help give people hope and another option to besides the drug pathway.
Man, well, good on you for standing in the fire and taking some of those arrows so that other people can learn from your experience. I've had similar things happen, and you just kind of shrug and go, "Well, I can only help those who are willing and want to walk a different path." And my experience doesn't have to be yours. So good on you
Right.
for continuing that work. All right, well, let's talk about the wide and wild world of plant medicine. So until
Hmm.
the Rockefellers came along in the 1900s and basically developed a petroleum-based model of medicine that even today rudely claims the title conventional, plant medicines were the medicines of history. So give the listener a sense of some of the history of the use of plant medicines and when did essential oils come on the scene?
Yeah, plant medicines, like you said, they were the original medicine. And so when we talk about conventional medicine, yeah, conventional medicine is not really conventional, what we call conventional medicine today. Chemical medicine is really only just over a centuries long, history, whereas we have um, centuries and centuries of plant medicine that have been used. What I find really interesting about plant medicine is that our ancestors figured things out through trial and error and intuition. And they just had to experiment and say, oh, this worked really well, or no, this didn't, or this made me sick, this made me feel good.
Right.
And they figured things out. But how often science and that now that we do in modern times validates what our ancestors figured out through trial and error and just their intuition. And we're just starting to explore and discover the mechanisms by which they knew it always worked, which that's something that always is fascinating me is I don't want to just know that it works. I want to know how and why, by what
Mhm.
mechanism, because that just helps me better understand and I think use these plant-based medicines in a more real way, more effective and more safe. So, plant medicines have been used really since the beginning of time. They were the original medicine. They were often just crude extracts, teas. They would boil plants in waters and drink the teas. They would make poultices out of them to put on topically. So that's a little bit just about broadly natural medicine or plant medicine. Essential oils, there's a little bit of um, a myth that they've been around for a very long time too. Traditional essential oils that are distilled or cold pressed from plants really haven't been around. as long as people think, because there's discussions all the time about, well, we found frankincense and we found peppermint in the tombs of the Egyptians that date back, 2000 BC. So people say, oh, they used essential oils. Not really. They used what I would term as an aromatic extract because they didn't use the distillation procedure to get these oils. Instead, to get the aromatic compounds, they would actually infuse them in animal fats or plant fats, and so it's more a resinoid or an absolute that they were creating that had the aromatic compounds, or they would soak them in wine or vinegar or something like that that could extract the aromatic compounds. So they were using crude aromatic extracts. It really wasn't until about the 10th or 11th century that we really saw the distillation process in use, where we used steam and water as the extraction method. There is a little bit of debate because some actually make the claim that Avicenna, which was a physician back in like the first century, that he may have used some crude distillation techniques that employed water and steam. But there's not as much evidence for that as there is in the 10th and 11th century, where we really saw kind of the booming of distillation as a method to extract essential oils and get the aromatic compounds out of plants. So that's really when essential oils started to be distilled. We started to get true essential oils as the 10th and 11th centuries. And then from there, it just kind of took baby steps into people started to explore their chemistry in greater detail, started to explore their properties until the modern day, where there's now thousands and thousands of studies on their properties and their chemistry that are really helping us to get to know essential oils at a deeper level.
Nice. Okay, well, let's define a term here. So, what is an essential oil? I've always wondered, is there such a thing as a non-essential oil? So, is that a thing, or is it like what makes it essential, and define it a little more specifically so the listener can know what we're talking about?
Yeah, and that is controversial in and of itself because there's not a real consensus. There are organizations, especially the aromatherapy organizations, which have put out definitions of what an essential oil is, and it's typically they're plant extracts, aromatic, volatile aromatic compounds that are extracted from plants using steam or hydrodistillation, and then also cold pressing. Cold pressing is where we get our citrus oils from. They can be distilled, but you're typically more commonly pressed out of the peel. So that's been kind of the accepted definition within the aromatherapy organizations and even some scientific organizations like the ISO, things like that. But that's not completely accepted universally. There are some very purist aromatherapists that say, I don't even want to include cold pressed essential oils, that I only want anything that's been distilled, whether it's steam or hydrodistillation. That's the only thing that should be considered a true essential oil because it's going to be more focused on the aromatic compounds, whereas cold pressing actually can bring in some waxes, some pigments, and some non-volatile compounds that will come into the process. And then when you get into the scientific literature, it gets really, really muddy because they'll call an essential oil virtually anything that has an aromatic compound in it. And so you really have to look at their methods of how they extracted it to see if it really was an essential oil, because they may call an absolute, which is extracted with like a solvent, which could be alcohol, could be any other solvent. They'll call that an essential oil in the literature. They'll also call other things, other extraction methods, essential oils. One that is particularly growing in being called an essential oil is through supercritical carbon dioxide. And the reason is because it's an inert substance and you can fine tune the settings of that to produce something that's identical nearly to an essential oil that's been steam distilled. That is called a CO2 select extract. So it's still considered an extract, but it's an aromatic extract that really does have a very close composition or chemical composition to a steam distilled essential oil. In fact, when I made that claim and said you can actually produce what I would consider an essential oil like extract with CO2, I had an aromatherapy group that said, no, that is not possible. And I said, well, I'll challenge you then. Let's do an experiment and see if you can figure it out. And I took the composition of 10 essential oils that had been extracted with from the same plant material with steam distillation or cold pressing, and then also with supercritical CO2. And I gave them the composition and I said, tell me which is which. And what I found was that these certified aromatherapists actually were able to determine which one was a CO2 and which one was distilled less than half of the time,
Wow.
which means it's simply a guess because you can guess 50-50 sometimes. So they could not decipher which was the right, which was which. And so to me, these CO2 selects are very close to an essential oil in their composition.
Got it. What a fascinating world. Okay, so is it fair? Like one of the words I was toying with was essence oil. It's kind of you're capturing an essence of a plant in its more in the complexity with which nature designed it. Is that a reasonable way to conceive of what's different about these oils than say a tea or a tincture or some other way we could use the herbs?
A lot of people do call them the aromatic essence of a plant, but even that is not really 100% accurate.
Okay. Well, let me ask it this way. So basically, what differentiates? Because what I imagine, tell me if this spectrum makes sense to you. There's the spectrum of now you can chew an herb out of the ground, or you could smoke something, or then you could crush it and turn it into a salve or poultice or something. But then you get to more specific extractions like alcohol, where you can extract more properties. And then to me, essential oils is a step beyond that. Do I have that accurate?
Yeah, the essential oils really the best way to think of them is they're going to focus on the volatile compounds in the plant
Okay.
because although they can contain trace amounts of non-volatile compounds, the majority of the composition is actually volatile aromatic compounds.
Okay. So
And so
what?
that's the big difference. They're low weight
Uh-huh.
and they're aromatic. So, for example, if I were to take lemon and I were to distill the peels of it, that peel would actually have bioflavonoids in it, and it would have some vitamin C in it, and it would have pigments, and it would have waxes. If I were to distill it, I'm not going to get any of the vitamin C, so I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to have any of the bioflavonoids. You may have some of the waxes and pigments, although distillation is unlikely to pull a lot of that over. But I will have all of these aromatic compounds, which are terpenes and other aromatic compounds.
Okay. So what threshold then does a pharmaceutical cross that an essential oil does not? Like, because I know even one of my other interviews about, I think it was parasites or mold, the person who thought of some of her products basically is like realized that farmers had just copied all these different things from nature and they changed it in
Mhm.
some way. So where does an essential oil stop that keeps it from becoming a pharmaceutical? And what threshold is pharmaceutical doing that is different here?
I think the biggest thing is that the pharmaceutical companies are looking for one bioactive molecule out of that essential oil.
Okay.
So, in the case of the citrus oil, if we just keep that, the lemon oil, they may extract limonene, which is the major compound in your lemon essential oil, and they will just synthesize it and create a synthetic version of it and say, there's our drug, because we now have the active compound out of the lemon essential oil, and it's going to actually produce the effects we want. An essential oil actually doesn't have just a single compound. You can look at a really simple essential oil, such as a wintergreen or a birch essential oil, and you may only have 12, 18 compounds in it total. But then you could look at something like a rose, a Roman chamomile that are highly complex, and you could have 250 compounds in there. And so they're these natural complex substances, and each one of the compounds or constituents that are within that essential oil has its own properties. So when you put all of them together, you actually have a additive, synergistic, and antagonistic or buffering effects that occur within a single essential oil. And because of that, each one of these compounds can act with different cell receptors, different molecular targets within the body, different pathways, and even by different mechanisms. And so you actually have a greater response in the body from an essential oil because you have all of this complexity that's going on, not an isolated compound. Now, the other part of using just a single isolated compound is you are going to increase your risk of side effects
Right.
because that's not how nature intended us to take the citrus. It doesn't want us to just consume limonene. It wants us to consume the entire complexity because sometimes there are compounds that are in there, even at trace amounts, that buffer the toxicity of the main compound so that we can actually have a greater response without the adverse effects. And I always say actually essential oils have side benefits, not side effects, because you often get an additional benefit that you didn't expect by using it because of the complexity.
Oh, that's so helpful. Yeah, because I know pharma just they'll take one molecule, they'll say this, to your point, is active. Everything else must have
Mm-hmm.
been irrelevant. And they'll
Yep.
concentrate that so disproportionately beyond anything nature ever would have packaged. And when you interrupt the biology at that kind of level, yeah, of course you're always going to have side effects. But it's great to hear you lay that out because I hadn't been able to put it into those words yet. So well done. Okay, give me an example maybe where an essential oil has an upside. So this more volatile organic compound has an upside that maybe like your basic herbal formulation, some powdered or dried herbs wouldn't have.
Yeah, there are actually a lot of unique properties in essential oils that give them a benefit. Okay, one is they are highly lipophilic in their nature, which means they're attracted to fats. They love fats. Well, guess what? Every one of our cells is surrounded with. It's surrounded with a lipid bilayer of fat. And so these essential oils are attracted to our cells. They can attach to those receptor sites on the cells once they're attracted there, or they can actually penetrate inside there, the cell, and then interact with the organelles with inside the cell. A great example of that is that there's technology now that's a special laser microscope called laser scanning confocal microscopy. And it allows us to look at these interactions under a cell or under a microscope, and it visualizes or displays the interactions in color. And you can see where an essential oil goes or what it does when it contacts a cell in this microscope. And peppermint essential oil is known for being an energizing essential oil. One of the places it likes to locate within the cell is to your mitochondria.
Hmm.
So it could be stimulating your mitochondria to produce cellular energy, and that's why it's an energizing essential oil. So that is one of the factors that I think that separates an essential oil from herbs. Another is because they're volatile aromatic compounds, they actually have access to privileged tissues that are more difficult to get herbs to.
Huh.
When you inhale an essential oil, some of it goes into the respiratory tract. The nice thing about essential oils is that they don't just stop at the upper respiratory tract like most things that you inhale. They actually can go all the way into the lower respiratory tract as well. So they can have a complete response in your respiratory tract that you can't get from many other solutions. The other thing is some of that inhales through your nasal cavity and actually goes through the olfactory system, the olfactory bulb, and into your brain. Because they're of the molecular weight that they and they're volatile, they can cross that blood-brain barrier, the filter, and actually enter brain tissue. And when they're in there, they can have positive effects in the nervous system. And then downstream, that's going to obviously affect multiple systems because that's the control center, right, of all these other systems. And so this ability to get to privileged tissues is another thing that makes essential oils just kind of this ideal natural solution for a variety of things. Those are two things that I think are kind of set essential oils apart from maybe their herbal cousins, but it doesn't mean you should just ignore them. I actually think using both is the ideal way to use them, because there are certain things that need to be established from a dietary supplement or from what you're consuming for essential oils to have the best activity. One good example is essential fatty acids. We have to have enough essential fatty acids in our diet or through supplementation to keep our cell, that lipid bilayer, permeable and flexible. And so if you can maintain that, that means things can enter the cell and they can also exit the cell. Those cells have to expel waste just like we do. And then they also have to take in nutrients and other things that are going to be beneficial to their function. And if you don't have that already established in your diet, then the essential oils may not be able to work as well if you already were had a good diet, you were eating these fatty acids or supplementing it through, a fish oil supplement or some other type of supplement.
Fascinating. So when I hear the word volatile, I think like your gas can in the garage. There's like
Yeah,
something dangerous. But what I'm picturing as you're saying this is something more like these oils are hungry to be able to be helpful. Like they're volatile and they're ready to react and go do things that are beneficial because there's a complex of molecules that nature has organized for us in a way that can be beneficial. Do I have that right?
yeah, and people do get scared of the volatile, that word, but really that just means that they have the ability that when they're exposed to the air, they evaporate and turn into a gas really quickly. That's what volatility means in this case. I don't be scared of volatility. That's just the way that they turn into a gas when they're exposed to air.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, you made a comment in your book. I got your Big Pharma, what Big Pharma doesn't want you to know about essential oils, which is a super helpful reference. But you made the comment that essential oils can unite the drug world of rapidly effective with the natural world's mantra of reduce risk of adverse side effects. So anything more you want to say
Hmm.
about that?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the whole conversation that we've already been having. Their unique properties make them very potent extracts that can have rapid effects. I've seen people that have been in emotional shock because they have an injury that I have had them just inhale some lavender, and within seconds they're out of that emotional shock. So
Wow.
they can act very quickly, and then they're highly potent, so they can have a significant activity within the body. But yet, going back to what we talked about, they're not just an isolated compound. They've got all of this complexity. They are less prone to have a side effect for that complexity, but also because they're made out of the same things we're made out of. They still have the same carbon molecules and the same molecular atoms and structure and things. And so, because they have the same, they're made of the same things we are, they're easily recognized and utilized by our body. They're not foreign to the body like a drug is. And so, they can have activity in a positive way without having side effects. Now, that being said, I don't want people to think I'm saying they can never have an adverse effect, because if you have something that can't produce an adverse effect, I would say it's not therapeutic in the first place. Anything that can produce a therapeutic effect can also produce an adverse effect. It's just how much you take, how often you're exposed to it, the method of exposure, that determines whether you're going to have a good effect, positive effect, or a negative effect that you don't want to have. But the therapeutic window for an essential oil is much wider than it is for a drug. So you can actually take it more safely within that window than you could a particular drug.
Nice. I love that explanation and a hat tip to like lifestyle as part of the wild card of or other habits or exposures and related to if the rare possibility to have a negative effect from it. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Well, then this may be outside your scope, but can you contrast essential oils at all with homeopathy? Is that a completely different paradigm?
Yeah, they do share the similarity of trying to work with the body to support healing, and that's one thing I really try and drive home with people, because people always say, "Oh, the essential oil healed me." No, the essential oil did not heal you. Your body did the healing. The essential oil facilitated that healing by removing roadblocks or facilitating the body's own natural processes. And homeopathy does the same thing. Homeopathy was something that was fascinating to me, so I took some extra classes on it when I was completing my doctorate. It's pretty complex when you really get down to classical homeopathy and trying to get to the right remedy based on all of the things that an individual's constitution has, their current emotions, their experience, all of that going on. So the biggest thing is that they do have the same goal of stimulating the body's own natural healing processes. Outside of that, I'd say they're pretty divergent because essential oils are very potent extracts, whereas homeopathic remedies are very dilute, infinitesimally dilute substances to where there's nearly nothing left in it. And that's intentional because they're often using things like poison ivy, for example, and they're in it that are diluted down to where it's not going to trigger a negative response in the body, but it's going to trigger a healing response. But there is a little bit of similarity in them, and I've used homeopathic remedies with essential oils before, which I know in classical homeopathy, they tell you not to, but I wanted to experiment and see, and I found positive results using them together.
Well done. Okay, cool. I like that you're just like me. You're willing to experiment with things and find what works. And yeah, you got the depth of knowledge to back up. It's not just a blind stab in the dark. You're wielding these tools well. Good job. Okay, so Scott, help us see this new paradigm. If you could snap your fingers and just implant into humanity all of your knowledge about essential oils, how would we think differently? Like, what would we stop doing? What would we start doing? And how might we approach our habits or our, health management differently?
I think first and foremost, we would start using essential oils preventatively.
Hmm.
We know that a lot of the conditions that are affecting modern man have a metabolic trigger to them, but also an inflammatory trigger to them. And so, if we can keep our metabolic function into a normal range, we can keep our inflammation into a normal range, then we can potentially just keep us from ever having to endure a condition. And so, if we can focus more as using them just to maintain health, then that would make a huge difference in people's overall health. We have lots of essential oils that can help with metabolic function. Lots of essential oils can help with our inflammatory response. Just a couple, when you think of your metabolic function, we have lemongrass and cinnamon that you can use. Those two have compounds in them that are known to help support healthy insulin responses, good insulin receptor activity, so you have better insulin sensitivity, good glucose management and utilization in the body. And then you could look at like copaiba and frankincense. Those are two great ones for helping to support an healthy inflammatory response, because we do need inflammation. Too many people think
Right.
inflammation is all bad. We don't ever want to have it. Well, if you didn't have inflammation, you'd be dead,
Right.
because inflammation is required for the immune system to fight foreign invaders. It's what's used to heal wounds. And there are other things that inflammation is involved with as a normal process to keep us healthy. It's when it goes outside its normal window that it becomes problematic and can trigger maybe some of the conditions that people associate inflammation with. But that would be the starters. But then the second thing is, when we do experience something, if you have a kit of a certain number of essential oils, there's a lot you can do at home. You wouldn't have to go to the doctor every time that you had a cold, or every time somebody had a minor burn or a minor cut or something like that. There's a lot that you can do with essential oils just in your home. Many mothers use them, and fathers, for the example, to help their children get through things that they're experiencing at home. We don't always need to run to the doctor. We need to return to where we take primary responsibility for our own health, and we focus on using these natural solutions first, And then you can always go to a Western medicine if the natural solution has not produced the effect that you need.
Got it. So would you say, what would you estimate? How much drug use would we discontinue if we had a working knowledge of essential oils? Like what would be left where they still have a place?
I think you could actually eliminate a significant, at least half, probably more than that, because there are so many essential oils that work by the same mechanisms, the same pathways, the same targets as a drug does. And so, if you know how to use them properly and you use combinations, especially when we start blending and using combinations, we get great responses that allow us to have the healing that our body needs rather than continue to focus on a drug.
Right on. Well, I want to give you a shout out because perhaps serendipitously, even between the first time we talked and recording today, I had a super stressful week on the home front, and my body let me know on a Saturday it was done. So it's weird. I get this maybe you can tell me what it is. I get this raging pain across the sacrum and upper glutes. It's like writhing worthy, where there's no relief, there's no position that you can't think about anything else. Nothing makes it stop. And I've maybe got it, once, twice in the last 10 years, but it comes, and the only thing that has ever given me any relief was Tylenol. I couldn't beat it with anything
Mm.
else. And we have your book now, and you have chapter by chapter of so like, allergies or pain or headaches or whatever in there. And so we just pulled it out and started referencing it. My wife has got this giant, wall of essential oils that she has, and we just started mixing and matching them. And sure enough, it totally took the edge off and made me able to sleep. It helped me calm down. And by the next day, I was better. Never has it gone that fast. So he's not crazy to say these oils can really do something dramatic if you know how to use them and combine them. And you happen to highlight a few my wife doesn't have, so we have more to order. But
Yeah.
it works. I'm just thrilled to be able to give people another tool to where they're not stuck going to something toxic like Tylenol that can do so many negative things to you. And if we can just understand and use nature's pharmacy in this potent form with a little measured amount of it, my wife was able to. There's so, as you know, there's so many different ways to use it. You can put it on your skin, you can put it in a capsule and swallow it, you can do it orally, and we even combined it with DMSO. And I found it to be remarkable. It gave me even more confidence that, yep, nature's got an answer for this. I just need to do my homework or have reference guides like your book to be able to go and deploy what I know. So thank you for that. And anything you want to add to that little story, or I'm sure you've got dozens and hundreds like them.
Yeah, we could talk a lot about that, but the reality is it's really just focusing on what your body needs in order to allow the healing mechanisms that are already inside your body to work their magic. We have so many systems that are designed to keep us in a state of health. They want to keep us in a state of health, but the modern lifestyle is often contrary to it. We eat processed foods, we are sedentary, we're exposed to chemicals ubiquitously in our environment. And so there's all of these things that are getting in the way. And so if we can have something that then is going to help facilitate those rather than be a roadblock, that's when the magic of essential oils really occur. And when I create protocols and put them in my books, it's based a lot on the mechanisms that they work by, and making sure that we're targeting what is going to help the body in its own healing processes. And that's the goal, is to just stimulate those healing processes, let the body do its work.
Right on. Well, thank you for doing that because it has personally helped me. I love it. Okay, so what are maybe some common myths about essential oils? I think you mentioned one, that there's never any potential of overdoing it, or what other things might people misconceive about essential oils?
There's a lot. There's a lot of myths out there. Some of them have been perpetuated for many, many years. One of the ones that I continually see is there was a study published, it's probably maybe more than a decade ago now, maybe it's been even 15 years, where some researchers claimed that if you used products that contained lavender essential oil, especially on your boys, that you were going to actually trigger gynecomastia in them, which is breast development. And so this study got published in one of the journals that many physicians and doctors read. And so they took it as gospel and ran with it. That study has been debunked so many times as pseudoscience that it's actually it's in my opinion it's to the point where it's unethical to keep sharing it
Hmm.
because you can look at how they confounded their own results based on the methodologies that they used. When you look at the products that they were claiming that actually caused this, those products have actually now been tested and found to not even contain a drop of true lavender essential oil. So they don't even contain lavender essential oil. They may contain synthetic chemicals that are found within lavender, like you can get synthetic linaloyl acetate, and you have linaloyl acetate inside lavender. So they're taking these synthetic chemicals that they've produced to mimic what's found in lavender essential oil. So that one is just very frustrating that it continues to be shared. It's shared by accounts that have major millions of followers, and so then everybody gets scared and throws their lavender away. That's one, but I think another is that all essential oils are quality and pure, and that is simply not the case. I keep in contact with some of the world's leading chemists on essential oils, and the current consensus is that we're about 80% of essential oils that are commercially available are adulterated. And
Gee.
so that's a very high number. If you go to your grocery store or a big box store and you find essential oils and they're cheaper, much cheaper than what you would see elsewhere, that is a red flag that you probably don't want to use that essential oil because it's not going to be pure. And the problem with so much adulteration in the industry is that people can use these adulterated essential oils and then they do have an adverse reaction because they have synthetic compounds in them that the body is not used to. And then they think, oh, well, I guess lavender essential oil is toxic because that's what it caused to me. No, it wasn't lavender oil that caused that. That was a synthetic cocktail that was disguised as lavender that caused that. And
Mm.
so you have to be really careful with the essential oil quality that you are using. You should find a company that's transparent in providing you the tests that they perform. Um, and not only that, that performs multiple tests because you can cheat or you can get over a GCMS analysis if that's all they're doing to test their oils. You can fake that out so that people can go, oh, this is a high quality oil. You have to do chiral analysis, you have to do optical rotation, you have to do specific gravity, you have to do all of these other tests that are layered one on top of another to really truly ferret out and find if it's a quality oil or if it's one that we shouldn't be using. I mean, there's lots and lots of other myths beyond that, but those are probably two that I think everybody should be aware of because you can't expect the good results from a poor quality oil. And at the same time, don't be afraid of the fear mongers who continue to share this study that's been debunked so many times that it's just pseudoscience.
Okay, good stuff. Well, you're making me think of corollaries in the health or the food world. Like I know avocado oil, olive oil, and honey are three products that they've cut them with so many other oils or put corn syrup or other things into the products. It's just another argument for know your farmer, know your
Yep.
source, understand where these things are coming from. Yeah, I had my wife actually had we had this shelf or I don't know, probably half a dozen, maybe a dozen different oils that she had got, I think from a grocery store. And then she realized doTERRA had better oils. And so blindly one day she came over to me with one of each. Like this is lavender from wherever, and this is doTERRA, and she had me smell them and try to guess which ones were the better oil. And every single time, I'm happy to say my nose actually works. I was
Mm-hmm.
able to go, I think this is the good one. And sure enough, it was the doTERRA oil. So yeah, there's something too, even just your smell test can go a long way. So in your book about essential oils, I mentioned you have so many different categories of ways that I think there's 19 or 20 different health situations where you can use an oil. So get practical a second. So talk to maybe the mama bear out there or somebody who's wrestling with something fairly common. What are some of the maybe if you had your top five remedies or your top five health situations that like this is kind of a layup, I can easily address these or often has a pretty noted benefit. Talk about some of the things that you use it for the most.
Yeah, so a lot of people find that they have a immune system that is hyperactive, and that also includes some inflammation in the body that's going on. And when you have those two things, you often experience discomfort and aches and as well. So if those things are going on, one of the things that I have found very helpful in supporting the immune system to be tolerant and also balanced in its activity, but also to help support that healthy inflammatory response and reduce the aches that are associated with that, is a combination of essential oils that you would put inside an empty vegetable capsule. And this is frankincense and copaiba, and then a fir essential oil. So this can be Siberian or balsam fir. They're similar in their chemistry, and they have the chemistry that I'm looking for this activity. But people put, depending on the situation and how, well, what you have going on in your individual situation, they'll put anywhere from between 3 and 5 drops of each in the capsule, then fill the rest of the capsule up with fatty oil. That can be MCT, avocado, olive oil, coconut oil, whatever ingestible oil that you have there. And you take that internally, and that's been working really well for a lot of people. I actually had somebody once send me a video of them just in tears and
Huh.
talking about how that was the only thing that has ever been able to give them any relief, and how grateful they were that I had published that in my book so that they could use that. Another thing I'd say is there's a lot of people who are concerned about their cholesterol levels. We know that lemongrass essential oil has been used in clinical research to help reduce cholesterol levels. It has a modest effect on it, but it did have an effect, and it's certainly better than a statin drug. Lemongrass essential oil is about 3 drops that were put in that same type of capsule situation that they were taking. And I was trying to remember, I think they may have actually taken that twice a day. It may have only been once, but that's another thing that people could potentially consider. For moms, often they get worried about kids who have an illness, and so sometimes they just need a mild essential oil to help the kid get through it, help their immune system work. And one of my favorites for young children is diluted lemon essential oil, and I can just apply that along the spine and have them have the support that their immune system needs to help fight whatever they're fighting at the time. And that's also just something that it just provides a relaxation to the body. The more relaxed state we can get our body in, the more it can heal. Anytime we're wound up, we're tight, there's tension, there's stress, our body is not going to work to its full extent. It's not going to be as effective in getting us back to homeostasis. And so when we can promote a relaxation response, that's super important for that to occur. I don't know. Those are a few that I think just come right off the top of my head on some of the things that people can do in order to just have relief at home and take care of yourself and be responsible for your own health.
Yeah. Well, and to I guess help moms or even our own family, we've learned to appreciate that a fever isn't something to be afraid of. It's something the body's
Hmm.
doing its work. And so how do we help the body through a fever if our kid has a cough or, they're stuffy? Like there are oils or there are other methods we have that can, to your point, just aid the body in being able to do what it's trying to do. And I love that there's some specificity with plant medicines that we can apply in these ways. So, anything about for allergies or maybe for just pain levels that you maybe haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, the allergies. There's actually quite a bit for that. One of the common things that people love to do is take a combination of lemon, lavender, and peppermint. Each one of those has a little bit of a unique activity in the respiratory system or with the immune system to help people who have seasonal allergies. And so that's typically ingested again in a capsule. You can just take them in a capsule. Peppermint works multiple ways in your respiratory system. It actually stimulates a ciliary beat response, which basically is what your body uses to expel mucus and get it out of the respiratory tract, which you can often have a buildup of that when you're having allergies. It also is what's called a bronchodilator. So when you put peppermint on your skin topically, you feel a cooling effect, and that's because it's actually interacting with receptors that are in your cells they're called transient receptor potential melanostatin 8 or TRPM8 receptors. That triggers a cooling response in the body because it's sending cooling signals to the nervous system, and the nervous system responds by cooling the area of the body because of that. Well, those same receptors are actually found within your respiratory tract, and so when peppermint goes inside your respiratory tract and interacts with them, it actually triggers a widening of your airways, and so you can have a better airflow in and out of the lungs. We often see when people have allergies, it becomes restricted or constricted, the airways. It can also spasm, and so it's going to help relax that and allow that not to happen. Lavender is used because it's actually a natural antihistamine. It does what's called mast cell stabilization. So your mast cells are cells within your body that contain these granules, and some of the granules that they contain are histamine. Histamine is actually one of those things that are released that triggers all of these characteristic symptoms of allergies. The runny nose, the watery eyes, the itchiness is histamine triggering that. By stabilizing mast cells, it basically, lavender helps reduce the number of those mast cells that are actually degranulating and allowing the histamine to just travel throughout the body and cause these symptoms. And then you have the last one with lemon. Lemon just overall helps to support the immune system and its immune activity. And so it's kind of, you get a combination of those three work really well when it comes to allergies. You mentioned pain. Topical essential oils actually are very effective as well. There is a whole host of essential oils that can work well. I mentioned peppermint and its cooling effect. If you can cool that area of the body, that's like applying ice. And so it's going to reduce an ache in that area. Wintergreen is another one it's high in methyl salicylate, and so it can be very supportive. It's what's called a counter irritant. So it causes a little bit of irritation locally, and so your body kind of focuses on that irritation there, and it doesn't think about what's going on beneath the surface there, which is helpful. You can look at other essential oils, like I really like copaiba topically, and I like the fir oils topically, and you can add other ones in, like anything that's high in camphor, like rosemary essential oil. There's just a whole host of essential oils that you can combine into a blend and put on topically and have good benefits or good relief.
Man, that's so cool. It's just a cornucopia of options, and it's just on us to try and whittle it down to things that work individually. It sounds like that would also help asthma as well. Is that accurate? Yeah.
Yeah, especially the peppermint, because that's one of the characteristics of asthma is that spasming in the airways. So if the peppermint can relax the airways and open them, that can be really helpful.
Got it. And you mentioned last time we talked that there's a few that you like to combine with DMSO. What would you suggest that this oil is even better if you put it with DMSO?
Yeah, you can get synergistic responses when you combine certain essential oils with other botanicals that are topical. DMSO is one of the things that you can combine it with. I usually just use very, very small amounts of DMSO, but I'll add it to any of those oils that we just talked about: wintergreen, copaiba, peppermint, to have an additional activity. DMSO is known to drive deep into the tissues. It's kind of a driver product, and it has its own relieving properties. So it just kind of triggers an amplifying effect when you use it with those essential oils. At least that's been my experience. I have A blend that I use for people who have really tough pain that they're trying to attack, that nothing else is really working, that includes DMSO, and it combines other things like arnica and some St. John's wort oil with several essential oils that works really well.
Right on. Yeah, it's been a fun tool in our health kit, and it's done so many amazing outside the box, unexpected things for us and our client base. It's just been remarkable how when you can just take the tailwind of that DMSO pulls the oils with it or puts it in places where the body needs a little boost. It's remarkable. And hopefully this episode gives you all some courage to go try these things. So any other ways that we haven't talked about of using oils? We talked about capsules internally, topically. I guess cooking is another one. People, you can use oils
Yeah.
for cooking too.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, the one thing that you need to be aware of if you use them for cooking is some of them are very strong. And so you may think, oh, oregano is a great spice that's used in, my grandma's Italian cooking. And so let's put a few drops in there. And then all it tastes like is oregano. So it's very, very strong. Sometimes all you need is a toothpick dip inside there and add that to your dish. But I like to use essential oils in cooking and other foods that I consume. I work out in the morning, and after my workout, I generally have a smoothie that has protein and some fruits and other things in it. And sometimes when I have a chocolate protein that I'm using, I'll add some peppermint essential oil, and it actually makes it taste like you're drinking a peppermint patty. And so it's nice. Or I'll add some tangerine oil, and then it's like you're having that Christmas orange that you're drinking. I also will add like some lemon or lime to my chicken. And so just mix some of that in some olive oil with some other spices, and you can go and apply that to your chicken that you're grilling. Or adding peppermint into some ice cream that we make homemade ice cream. And so we'll have some ice cream, add peppermint, and you have mint chocolate chip there. That's certainly better than what you're buying at the store.
Fantastic. I never thought to put it in ice cream or smoothie. So yeah, it's a fun world. I see why my wife has so many different oils now, and she's a kid in a candy store learning all the different ways to use them. But it is exciting, and it becomes just part of your lifestyle to think, "Oh, what oil would I use for that, or where could I use this?" She likes to anoint the kids' heads when she prays over them, or she likes to put a diffuser in the room and just in many ways change the mood of the room. It does
Yeah.
wonderful things. There's so many great ways to use these oils. So is there anything significant maybe that I haven't thought to ask you or about the world in general or specific that I'll make sure everybody knows this?
I think we've covered a lot of the things that I think are just so foundational for people to know if they really want to use essential oils. The one thing I would say outside of that maybe we haven't talked about is people need to be aware of potential interactions between the essential oils they're taking and any medications that they're on.
Great.
That's something that people frequently ask. There is potential, although I would say clinical experience says that they're not really very common. It's pretty rare to see an essential oil and a drug interaction, but they can occur, especially with something like a wintergreen essential oil it's virtually 99% methyl salicylate, which is a compound similar to aspirin. And so that interaction between aspirin, it can occur with methyl salicylate in the wintergreen essential oil or even birch essential oil. It's also high in methyl salicylate. So it's just good to be aware of those and make sure that you're consulting an informed healthcare practitioner or pharmacist that can say, okay, these are potential interactions. Most of them will have no clue. But if they don't have a clue, then that's when you need to do your own due diligence. And in my book that's called Medicinal Essential Oils, I have what's an appendix in the back. It's Appendix G. You can flip to it and say, okay, here's aspirin. Here's all the essential oils that could potentially interact with that. Or I'm taking a diabetic medication. And so here is all of the things that could potentially interact with that. So we're at least aware of those things and not just using them concurrently at the same time to where we might have a response we don't want to have.
Great. I'm glad I asked. That was an important nugget. So thanks for saying that. All right. So as we start wrapping up here, I guess I wanted to maybe just zoom back out with you and kind of remind the listener of the importance of lifestyle, or of you talk about the
Mhm.
difference between health span and lifespan, and really just quality of life. So say anything you want to the listener, just to kind of inspire them to and remind them that their health is their job to manage. No one is going to manage it for you, and it's on us to do the work to learn these things and just reap the benefits of it.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're ending with lifestyle because it's so important that that's established first. Anything that we use beyond lifestyle is going to work far better if we're also focusing on our lifestyle. And all too often, people just want to come into natural medicine and say, I'm taking X drug. What is the substitute that I can take? And that's not really how natural medicine works. Natural medicine is really lifestyle medicine. And we need to look at, how are you eating? How are you moving? What do you do to manage your stress? Are you sleeping well? Are you trying to minimize the toxins that are coming into your body? And then once we get all of these foundational lifestyle things set, then we can use these natural solutions with far greater efficacy, and we get greater results at a more rapid pace. And so it is so important that we kind of become our own family physician, our own personal physician, and take primary responsibility for our own health and make sure that we are getting our lifestyle in order, and then we use these options. That was one of the biggest frustrations when I first got into natural medicine and I was working with clients, was that come in and say, well, I just want you to tell me what I can take instead of this drug. And I said, well, we're not going to be able to work together then, because that's not how I work. We need to look at everything that you're doing in your life, because no amount of taking an essential oil is going to really override if you go to McDonald's every day for lunch and you're eating a box of cereal in the morning, and then you just come and sit on your couch all night and watch Netflix. And so if you're not going to put in the work, you're not going to see the results.
Yeah, if you're not a participant in your own healing, the analogy I make is just kind of imagine putting good food in a dirty sink. Like you can't get the system to heal when the water is inside you is still dirty. We've got to clean that out, and that's lifestyle. Are you pooping every day and multiple
Mm-hmm.
times a day? Are you getting the exit cleaned out so that the stuff that should go goes? And to your point, have you reduced the influx of what's burdening you? And if we lose that macro frame, then the rest of this is just majoring in minors. But once
Mm-hmm.
that's working, oh my gosh, these oils then become super effective. So, any other thoughts you want to leave the listener with before we call it a day?
I would just say that don't lose hope,
Yeah.
because I would say my condition is considered incurable, and it's considered one that's going to be a debilitating condition, that is going to affect your life significantly the older you get. And I'm an example of overcoming that through lifestyle changes and using the natural solutions that are helpful. So don't let somebody tell you that there is no hope. I have seen some pretty miraculous things occur in people's lives because they were willing to put in the effort to make changes and then use the right solutions guided by the evidence that we have, and also leveraging that healing art that has been around for so long.
Yeah, right on. Okay, well, it's been so good having you. Tell people where they can hear about your newest book, or where they can find your podcast or website, anything else you want them to know about how to learn from you even more.
Yeah, so most of my books, you can find my books at authorscott.com/shop, and then that'll have a link to all of the books. I don't sell them directly from my website, but that'll have links to either get them from Amazon or other bookstores. There are a handful of them that I allow people to purchase directly from my printer. My printer has allowed that so that you can go and get one, bypass the middleman, and go directly to him. You get a little bit better price that way. So that's also on the website. You can find me on my social media channels. I do have a Facebook page. It's just Scott A. Johnson on Facebook. And then on Instagram, it's Doc Scott Johnson. And then my podcast is Regaining Health and Humanity. So you can find that on any of your streaming services. That's, Apple, Spotify, all the major streaming services, as well as YouTube and Rumble.
Right on. You are everywhere. It sounds great. Okay. Well, thanks for that. knowledge. And I would just say go get his books, people, and follow his work. If this is an interesting topic to you, I do not know of anyone better to learn from. So thank you, Scott, so much for being on the show today. It has been great having you.
Thanks, Christian. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Deconstructing Conventional. If this conversation sparked new questions or helped you see things in a new light, feel free to share it with a friend who is on a similar journey. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and a perspective that challenges the norm. Check us out on our website at healingunited.today and find us on social media at Healing United, or you can check out the Healing United PMA app. It's a great way to stay connected. Remember, question everything and rebuild intentionally.